Hi, welcome back to Tuesdays with Timeless. I'm Dr. Stefanie Christian. We're heading into May, which is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. And I've done a number of videos talking about UVA and UVB rays and about sunscreen, but I thought I would answer some questions that I get relating to sunscreens. And the first one will be to answer, can I use my makeup as my sunscreen? And in short, the answer is no. And there are 4 specific reasons why not. And the first 2 have to do with how the FDA grades SPF. First, SPF measures only UVB rays. They grade SPF based on how long it takes the test subject's skin to turn pink or red after applying the product and exposing that skin to light. As a brief reminder, UVB rays are the burning rays, and they cause cancer. UVA rays are the aging rays. They cause brown spots, enlarged pores, visible capillaries, thinning of the skin, sagging skin, wrinkles, fine lines, and they cause cancer. So we want sunscreen that protects against both. And we are learning more and more all the time about how other things affect the skin. Infrared rays, and environmental toxins. And so we are getting more and more sophisticated sunscreens all the time. But today we're talking about makeup. Most makeup doesn't have any kind of sunscreen, but if it does, it has SPF labeling. So all it has is UVB protection. When you're talking about sunscreen that also has UVA protection is called broad spectrum. However, the only measurement is SPF. So the only quantitative measurement is how much UVB protection there is. They mention that there is UVA protection, but it's not measured. The SPF number is only how much UVB protection you get. So my first issue is that most cosmetics, if they give you an indication that they have sunscreen in them, give you an SPF, which means you're only getting UVB protection. You're not getting UVB and UVA protection. Whereas these days, most sunscreens also give you infrared protection and environmental protections. The second thing is that by FDA regulations, when they're testing a product in order to grade its SPF, you have to put on 2 milligrams per centimeter squared of skin on the test subject. Now, for reference, on my finger, that right there is about a centimeter squared. When I was thinking about 2 milligrams per centimeter squared, that seemed like an awful lot of product for a very little space on the skin. And I wanted to see if anyone had actually studied how does that compare to what most women put on. And fortunately, someone has studied that. Her name is Dr. Leslie Bauman, MD. She is a board-certified dermatologist, and she's CEO of Bauman Cosmetics and Research Center in Miami, Florida. And first, she studied to determine what is the average amount of sunscreen in foundation. And then she determined what is the average amount of powder foundation a woman puts on, and what is the average amount of liquid foundation women put on. And what she found is that for a woman who puts on liquid foundation to get 2 milligrams per centimeter squared on, she would have to put on 7 times as much foundation. And for a woman who puts on powder foundation, she would have to put on 14 times as much powder foundation to get 2 milligrams per centimeter squared. What that tells me is that the SPF they put on the package of cosmetics is a fantasy number. No one puts on that amount of foundation in order to get that SPF. The third thing is that the vast majority of sunscreens in cosmetics are chemical sunscreens. The way chemical sunscreens work is you put them on your skin and you rub them in, and then they get their name because they set up a chemical interaction with the skin, and it takes 30 minutes for that chemical interaction to set up, And then that chemical interaction burns itself out after 2 hours. And so you have to reapply it every 2 hours. How many of you actually put on makeup every 2 hours? Well, for one thing, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so most of us aren't putting on makeup at all. I'm now putting on just a tinted sunscreen, and that's it. So most of us are not ever going to put on makeup every 2 hours. So if you have sunscreen in your makeup, you're going to have to put it on every 2 hours if you're counting that as your sunscreen. It's not going to happen. So after 2 hours, you are not protected. Point of fact. And the fourth thing is, people who put on makeup usually put it on their face. Now, some people might blend it onto their neck, but almost no one puts it on the part of their chest that's exposed. But if you're putting on sunscreen, I always say as my mantra, put it on from your hairline to your nipple line, because the face and the neck are almost always exposed. Now, you might be wearing a turtleneck, and if you're wearing a turtleneck, clothing is a great blocker of UVA and UVB rays. But if your neck is exposed, you better be putting on sunscreen there, the front and the back. And if you've got a neckline that exposes part of your chest, you want to be putting it there too, because all of this skin should be protected, and ideally protect your hands as well. And my hint there is to put a sport sunscreen there. It may not protect you for the kind of hand washing we do during a pandemic, but for regular kind of hand washing, plus, the kind of stuff we do, if you've got kids or grandkids and you're putting things in OxyClean and then taking them out and throwing them in the washer, that kind of exposure to water is not going to wash off a sport sunscreen. It can handle 16 of those kinds of exposures to water. And so it's nice to put on a sport on your hands. So we now have 4 reasons why makeup that has sunscreen doesn't count as your sunscreen. 1, it measures SPF, which is UVB protection, not broad spectrum protection. And these days, sunscreens are very sophisticated, and you're getting a lot more protection than just UVA and UVB. 2, no one puts on as much makeup as they do in the studies. No one's putting on 2 milligrams per centimeter squared, which is what they put on to determine the SPF. 3, the sunscreen is almost always chemical, but it should be zinc-based. Titanium dioxide is not enough. Titanium dioxide itself protects against UVB rays, not against UVA. So they always put a chemical sunscreen with titanium dioxide in order to get the UVA protection. And once again, then you have a chemical sunscreen. And then you have to be putting it on every 2 hours. We're not going to be putting on makeup every 2 hours. And the 4th reason is because you want to be protecting your face, your neck, and your décolleté. And most people don't put on makeup that way. They put it on their face. So best to be using a zinc-based sunscreen that you put from hairline to nipple line every day of every week of every month forever. So that's it for today. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you next Tuesday.